This is Hands Like Hide, a podcast for men who know the weight of a long day, the ache of sore hands, and the pull for something more. Through raw stories, biblical truth, and practical wisdom, we explore recovery, growth, and how to become the man you were intended to be. Because every job teaches, and every story has the power to transform you and everyone you lead. Let's get to work. Good morning. How are you? It's awesome that you joined me here today, and I'm thankful that you're taking time out of your busy work schedule and everything else that you have going on in your life to connect with me, connect with this content, and just have this little process back and forth. It means a lot to me. This is Hands Like Hide, where every job teaches and every story transforms. I am your host, Charlie Pfeiffer, and today we're going to talk about something a little bit more painful, I guess you could say. We got to get real often. But we're going to talk about imperfect progress and what that means. Imperfect progress. A lot of times when we try to get started doing something, I think in a few of my previous episodes, I talked about this like J-curve concept. You get started doing something and it's going to get worse before it starts getting better. Well, that's kind of this idea of imperfect progress. And that term is coined by Dr. Eddie Caparucci. He wrote a book called Why Men Struggle to Love, and it is a fantastic read. I highly encourage you to read it because, love, emotional connection, for me, it has not been something that has come naturally, and I would dare to say that for most of us men, it kind of rings true. We're not naturally bent toward like the emotional side of intimacy and love in those respects. And so, Why Men Struggle to Love. He really digs deep into sort of the process of what's going on there. So let's talk about this. I had a situation this past week that definitely revealed that I'm struggling to love. I'm struggling to communicate well, and it resulted in a lot of an emotional pain and some angst. And I thought, in my mind, progress is going well in my process, in my recovery, and also like in my process in healing with my wife, Sarah. Progress is going well. And then I decided to be a knucklehead. And progress didn't feel so good anymore, right? And he had a tendency to like, oh man, this hurts. What happened? What's going on? And so we're going to talk about why that's the case. So what happened is there's a workout group that I sometimes attend in midweek. It's super early mornings, man. It's like they meet at like 5:30 in the morning. And they work out outside all the time. I know they're like, I think they're nationwide. If you're interested in looking them up, I think that's called F3. I'm not sure the exact website. I could probably find that information and post it somewhere, but F3. So it's, a bunch of guys, you get together and you're just doing like calisthenics workouts outside, running, walking, jogging, push-ups, sit-ups, the whole bit, beating yourself up on stairs. And it's a really cool process and program. But for me, I don't consistently go every week. Still working on kind of healing and strengthening my low back issues and stuff like that. And it's getting better. But if I'm not feeling super good, one day or the other, 1 week or the other, then I won't go to the F3 workout because I just don't want to like, strain myself and make it, make my healing worse. So what happened was Tuesday night I went to bed and I had a good night's sleep. And then I woke up Wednesday morning at like 5 o'clock in the morning with this like impulsive thought, this impulsive idea. I was like, I'm going to go to the workout group. And I knew I was going to be late, right? Because they start at 5:30, pretty much a hard start at 5:30. And I'm going to go to this workout group. I woke up with that thought and I jumped out of bed and I real quick got my clothes on or whatever. And I got dressed and I went over, I hugged my wife goodbye, gave her a kiss goodbye, and like out the door I went. And it was like, out the door, in my truck, flying down the road. And I'm like, I got to get there real fast. And it was like this whole thing of like, I got to get there. That was kind of like in my mindset going on. And so do the workout, great workout, had a good time. And then driving back home. And as I'm driving home, stopped at Dunkin', because I just had a workout. So why not get, a cappuccino or something like that to go with it? That doesn't seem to make sense. But sometimes you need a Dunkin'. So I'm driving to work then, and I just had this thought, right? It's like the Holy Spirit just sort of kind of talking to me a little bit, going, all right, so you left over an hour earlier than you normally do, right? So normally I report to work at 6:30 in the morning. So I'm usually out the door around 6 to 10, 6:15, something like that. I'm fortunate enough to work pretty close to home. And I generally communicate to Sarah, like if I have an earlier start or something like that, I got some driving to do, like, hey, I got an earlier start tomorrow. I got to be at work at whatever time. And so she just is aware that like I'm going to get up earlier and I'm going to be leaving earlier. In this specific case, though, 5 o'clock I wake up, 5:15 I'm out the door. Why? I didn't communicate what was going on there. And so I get to work and call her an hour or so later, just do a check-in, say, hey, how's it going? Thinking about you, whatever. And then I just sort of, in the course of the conversation, like, yeah, I got up this morning and I just really felt like I wanted to get down there to the workout group. So I went to the workout group. And in the moment, I didn't really think anything of it. I was just, relaying some information. Like, yeah, I just went to this workout group. But I could tell by the tone of her voice, by her response, by the energy on the call, that hurt, right? That hurt her, that information. And so she, we got off the call and everything, and I just started thinking about it a little bit more, just kind of processing this a little bit more. Now, here's the, I guess you could call it the pivotal moment, or the point in this story where I will encourage you to consider your own life and to consider your own actions and the effect you have on people, right? We can't just own like we have to, it's not just like our intentions, right? We have to own how we are affecting people as leaders and as men. If you intend good, or you don't intend to hurt somebody, or you don't intend to be irresponsible, yet in your leadership and in your family, in your business, they experience you that way, as irresponsible or hurtful, then you have to own that, right? You've got to own how people are experiencing you. And yeah, you could say that's their problem. You could say I didn't do anything wrong. What's their problem? Okay, you could definitely you could behave that way. You can. But I can tell you that won't lead to greater connection, greater relationships, better respect from your guys, from your wife, from your kids, right? Because what you're doing there is like you're minimizing, you're blame shifting, you're denying that, and you're basically saying like, I don't have any problems here, you do, right? And so, and there again, there are situations, I believe there are situations where, in terms of responsibility, right? It's not your responsibility to deal with, it's somebody else's responsibility, right? There are situations like that. However, what I'm advocating for, or what I'm talking about, is you're responsible to be responsible to yourself, right? You have to always be aware of what you're doing, what your thoughts are, what your feelings are, what your emotions are, what your intentions are, and you always need to be considering and reflecting on those things. And that's the point, right? You're not focusing in considering other people's motives and intentions. Like that's not your business, right? Your business is your business, right? So in this call later on, I sent her a text and I said, I sensed you're kind of quiet, and I could see why that would be hurtful to you. And then I said to her, because I went somewhere and you didn't know where I went, and then I left you worrying and wondering where you went. And she later on said, well, I just assumed you went to work early. I wasn't sure why you didn't tell me you had to go to work early that day, whatever, but I just assumed you went to work early. And then when you told me that you, in fact, weren't at work, right, then it brought up a whole bunch of memories, and it brought up a whole bunch of stuff that when I was active in my addiction, I would say, yeah, I'm going to go to Lowe's to look at some tools, right? But on the way there is the adult bookstore. You tracking? Or, yeah, I'm just going to go, this is an example. I'm just kind of coming off the top of my head here. I'm just going to see my brother. But on the way there's the bar. Yeah, so you swing in there and you have a couple of drinks. A lot of times in unhealthy behaviors and addictions, it's very common to give a truth. I'm going somewhere, but you also went somewhere else that you're not disclosing where you went, right? So you're not lying, technically, air quotes. You're not lying about where you went. I did go to Lowe's. See, I bought the tools. Yeah, but you also went somewhere else. And that's where the shame and the secrets lie, right? So in healing and in your process, as men of integrity, as leaders, we need to what the quote from Oswald Chambers comes to mind: when the inside matches the outside, or vice versa, when the outside matches the inside, that's integrity, right? So you're going where you say you're going, and if you have to make some divergence and some turns, or you got to go somewhere else, you're a man of integrity. Say, yeah, I went there, but I also stopped here, and also stopped here, and also stopped here. What you're doing is you're demonstrating trustworthiness. What you're doing is you're demonstrating transparency, active transparency, and vulnerability in those moments. So in this situation, I didn't tell her where I was going. She thought I was somewhere, and in fact, I wasn't there. I was somewhere else. So I'm letting her believe something that's not true. That's not integrity. And then she responded with this phrase, just simple 3 words, and it hit so hard, dude. I'm telling you, it hit so hard. She said, "You broke trust." That's all she said. You broke trust. And I'm like, oh man, right? Trust is one of the most precious gifts that anybody can give you. When you have trust from somebody, they have given you a precious gift. And when you break that trust, right, it could be just as quick as making a really simple decision, right? You have some decisions to make. And you could say, what's the big deal? What do you mean I broke trust? What's the big deal? I didn't do anything wrong. I just went to do some workout with some guys, and then I went to work, right? I'm like, what's the big deal? I don't understand why you think this is such a big deal. You could respond that way. Again, that's minimizing, that's blame shifting, right? That's invalidating their experience of you. If you respond that way, you are invalidating how they are experiencing you. And how do you know how you're doing as a leader? How do you know how you're doing as a man if you're not paying attention to how people are experiencing you? That's your feedback. That's the mirror, dude. Like, that's the mirror to know how you're doing. It's how people are experiencing you. So if you come in there with this attitude, it's like, what's the big deal? You're breaking the mirror. You're refusing to look in the mirror. You're refusing to even acknowledge that there is a mirror there to give you feedback, right? It's like leaving the house and you look horrible and you don't even care. You're refusing to look in the mirror. Or, right, you could look at it another way. All right, and this is the difficult way. This is not the easy way. This is not natural to us as men. This is not natural to us as human beings. But you could take ownership, right? You can own your impact, not just your intention, right? You can own that. You can connect the pain, right? You can connect the mirror. You can connect the pain to prior events, right? This is really kind of subtle. This is kind of nuanced. This is kind of like it takes a great deal of humility, in my experience, for me to do this. I can see why I broke trust with you. You make sense. I can see why that's upsetting to you, because in the past, I said I was going to go to Lowe's, but I also stopped at the adult bookstore and spent some money, right? And then I went to Lowe's and then I came back. And then you wondered what took me so long, because I lost track of time at the adult bookstore. So you can connect that to a prior event. And the more detailed you get, the more you are showing her or your family or your crew, whoever is you're in charge of, that you're not afraid to be humble and actually say, you make sense to me right now. You are validating their experiencing of you, your experience of you. You're validating their experience of you. You're telling them that they matter to you. You're communicating to them that you value them and their feedback. And you're telling them that you're going to do something about it. Right? What do you do about it? All right. So what do you do next? Like after you have these situations, after you have that conversation, after you're like, well, that makes sense. Well, then now what? So you have all the information. Now you have all the information, right? You have your thoughts and feelings before you made your choice, right? You have the choice that you made. And you also have the impact or the fallout or the results of the choice you made. Okay? So now what do you do? What do you do with that? There's a quote here I want to read. Her name is Ellen White. She's passed away 100 plus years ago now, back in the 1800s. She's did a lot of Bible commentary stuff, wrote a whole bunch of books, and in one of her pamphlets, she wrote this quote in the pamphlets, the Review and Herald. She wrote this April 10 in 1894. This is just a little excerpt from this whole pamphlet. But she said, "The Lord brings his children over the same ground again and again, increasing the pressure until perfect humility fills the mind and the character is transformed. Then they are victorious over self and in harmony with Christ." And then she goes on to say, God reveals our defects to us. God reveals our defects to us. Pause that. How does he do that? My belief is, like I said before, God reveals your defects to you through the way you're affecting other people. It's the way other people respond, react, behave, all these things when they're in your presence is how God is revealing your character to you, right? That's the mirror. God reveals our defects to us. Our job is to critically examine the complicated emotions and motives of our own hearts. That's our job, is to look at the feedback we're getting and then critically examine the complicated emotions and motives of our hearts and our minds and our intentions and our actions. Yeah, brother, this is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. I'm going to throw a little plug in here and say that my coaching program, Reframing Mentoring, is all about this. This is what I'm all about. Reframing life's experiences as teaching tools for growth and transformation. That's the whole point. You're looking at your life the whole way around. You're looking at your situations, what has happened in your life, what'd you do, what's the result of that, how are people affecting you, and then reframing all of that, even your past traumas, even the stuff that's been done to you and were done to me that is difficult to talk about and cringeworthy. How can we frame that for growth and transformation? That's the whole thing. If you want to know more about my program or how to reach out to me, you can go to reframedmentoring.com. And you can find some blogs I've written in there. There's a calendar link and also a link to the podcast stuff as well. I will link that in the show notes as well. So here we are. You've got your mirror. You've got your intention. Now it's time to critically examine your thoughts and your motives. All right. So this is what I did. I am a huge advocate for journaling. Notebook, a journal, a planner. This is where you're going to make this happen. If you work with me, I'm going to ask you to grab a journal because we're going to be working out some stuff all the time. Promise you this. But here's this prompt I want to share with you that I worked through and that I would encourage you to work through if you find yourself in this situation where you are a knucklehead, something happened, the feedback you're getting is very uncomfortable. It creates a lot of emotional pain. What do you do with that now? Well, here's some questions. What did the start feel like? What did it look like? So in other words, in the beginning, before you made this choice, what was going on in your hearts? What did you feel? What were you thinking? What were your emotions? What were your body feeling like? So you're just trying to connect with yourself in there. Were there any unresolved challenges in your life? Were you running away from anything? What usefulness can I get from this experience to improve? Again, what's the quote? I don't know the guy who said it, but pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, right? So what usefulness can you get from this painful experience to improve? The next question is, what can I learn that I don't want? Okay, you're critically examining this. What did I learn that I don't want? And then here we go. Knowing what I know now, because I had this experience, how will I approach my future differently? Right? Knowing what I know now, because I had this experience, how will I approach my future differently? And then lastly, gratitudes. What are you thankful for about this experience? Okay. Some of those questions have come from a book I read called 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dr. Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan. I would highly encourage you to check out that book. That's kind of a profound book. So let me show you how this process works out. When I did this journal prompt to kind of critically examine what happened earlier this week in my relationship, here what I have. What did the start of it look and feel like? I felt spontaneous, or you could say impulsive. I felt impulsive. I felt a sense of urgency and a sense of intensity. Okay? What were there any unresolved challenges? Yes. So the unresolved challenges I had were I did a roof repair that didn't go as planned. It spent twice as long than I expected, and I still had a roof leak, and I had to go back and fix it. My wife and I were in a difficult season with our process over the last, say, 4 to 6 weeks. We've been just kind of working through some stuff. And lastly, we're going through some changes at work that is going to require me to be more independent and approach work with a more powerful, attitude. Not powerful like bully, but powerful like making decisions and being confident, right? Those are things that kind of give me some anxiety to kind of behave in that way. Number 3, what usefulness, right? So here's what I gained: an increased awareness about spontaneousness or impulsive behaviors, right? So when I feel the urge to be spontaneous or compulsive, to look at it like it's a trigger to pause and ask some wise questions. WHYS. Why, right? Ask some wise questions. Another thing that I learned from this experience was that it's another opportunity to exercise empathy, right? That was some usefulness that I gained from this experience. Lastly, to understand better how compulsivity manifests itself. Example, I can see it coming before, I act out. That makes sense. Based on my thoughts and feelings, I can say, I'm feeling a sense of urgency. That means it's soon to lead to a compulsive action, right? So that's some usefulness I can gain from this. What did I learn? Having this experience, what did I learn? Well, I learned what I don't want, right? I don't want to behave in ways that break trust. That is the obvious way. It's simple to come up with that. I don't want to behave in ways that break trust. And I don't want to be unaware. I don't want to be so unaware that I don't see it coming, right? I don't want to be like that I don't see it coming. All right, 5th question. Knowing what I know now because I had this experience, how will I approach my future differently? I can better use my notebook and plan my time and my intention. I can be much more intentional about that, right? I can engage more in gratitude exercises, which, again, right, some of the challenges I was having was the roof issue, the difficult process with my wife, having to make some internal shifts in my head around work. And if I start focusing more on the gratitudes around that and just really focus on the positives in those scenarios, even if it doesn't feel positive in the moment, that's good. That's settling, right? And lastly, gratitudes. What am I thankful for about this experience? So here's what I wrote. I am thankful for my wife's honesty and a very clear feedback. Here's how you're affecting me. You broke trust. That's very clear, right? I'm very thankful for the healing reality. God is at work, right? God is at work bringing me over the ground again and again through this emotional pain because he's trying to refine my character. And that's what he's doing to you as well. When you find yourself in situations that create a lot of emotional pain, if you're anything like me, then our natural tendency is to avoid that, to not feel that, to say like, it's got to be someone else's issue, or to medicate because I don't want to feel this. But I'm telling you, like, in that moment, you're losing something very precious that is very important to your growth and process as a man and as a leader. And lastly, I'm thankful for the pain and discomfort. I mean, what's the military slogan? Pain is weakness leaving the body. Is that Army or Marines? Pain is weakness leaving the body, right? If you ever engaged in exercise or working out, or you're trying to accomplish this task and it's difficult and it's painful, it's easier for us as men to accept something that's physically painful, to grow or to get stronger or to conquer or to achieve, even at the expense of our bodies, physical pain, than it is for us to accept emotional pain, because emotional pain in some ways hurts a whole lot more than physical pain, right? But emotional pain is your character growing. Emotional pain is where your character is being transformed. It's where your character is overcoming the sense of self and all of these unhealthy actions and behaviors. Does that make sense? So I'm thankful for the pain and discomfort because it is evidence of growth, right? You need to reframe emotional discomfort and pain, accept it as feedback, and say that is evidence of growth, right? I'm sure you probably know somebody that like they avoid and they run away from all forms of pain, whether it's physical or emotional or spiritual. They just run away from all of it. And I can tell you that that is a very empty, hollow, pathetic person. And their lives are falling apart everywhere. Don't be that guy, right? Don't be like that. Embrace that emotional pain. So where are we at today? We're growing. We're healing. We're getting better. And I want to just encourage you as you kind of think through this upcoming week. I'm going to put this journal prompt up on my website, and I'll put a link to it so that you can find it. That I want you to look at your situation, and I want you to say, where is there emotional pain in my life? And then use this prompt and go through it and look at it like, okay, so this emotional pain is designed to help me grow. Okay, this is evidence that God is working in your life to transform you into the man that you are designed to be. This is Hands Like Hide. Every job teaches, every story transforms, and sometimes your job isn't to go to work and twist that wrench, lay that brick, pound that nail, drive those miles. Sometimes that's not your job. Sometimes your job is to sit down with a pen and paper and to ask yourself, to critically examine the intricate details of your thoughts and your emotions and your intentions, and how is it affecting those that you are responsible for, those who look to you for leadership and for safety, those you lead. Sometimes that is your most important job. Thank you so much for joining me. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Remember, Hands Like Hide on Instagram, my website, www.reframedmentoring.com. You can book a call there. You can shoot me an email there. I'll have the links in the show notes. Thank you so much and have an amazing week. Bye-bye.